We're going to be talking about the fluid transport in the lymphatic system. So, water is important for key roles in our body's function, which include waste disposal, nutrients, protecting organs and joints, and maintaining body pressure. So, water helps optimize blood vessel functions, which allows for more efficient delivery of nutrients. It improves the blood circulation, which enhance oxygen delivery to the brain. And it's important for maintaining cognitive functions. It also makes up 60% of our body weight. So, intercellular fluid lies within the cell, and the principal component is the cytoplasm, cytosol. It makes up about 60% or two-thirds of our total body weight, and it's rich in potassium. Extracellular fluid is the fluid outside of the cell. It makes up one-third of our total water in the body. It is 20% found in the plasma, and the major cation is the sodium, and the major anions are the chloride and bicarbonate. So, bulk flow is the movement of fluid molecules due to the presence of a pressure gradient, or it can also be a temperature gradient. It is commonly the most mode of transport of nutrients and water in plants and animals. So, fluid moves out of the capillaries and into the tissue by filtration due to the higher pressure inside of the capillary compared to the surrounding tissue. In contrast, when the pressure in the tissue becomes greater than the one in the capillaries, the fluid moves back into the bloodstream by reabsorption. So, there are two types of pressure. We have hydrostatic and osmotic pressure. Hydrostatic is when pressure is moving the water out. So it forces the fluid out of the capillaries. The pressure exerted by the blood against the wall of the capillary is called capillary hydrostatic pressure. The interstitial fluid hydrostatic pressure is the type of interstitial fluid that increases as fluid leaves the capillary and enters the tissue. Generally, the CHP is higher than the IFHP because lymphatic vessels are continually absorbing excess fluid from the tissue, and the fluid will generally move out of the capillary and into the interstitial fluid. This is known as filtration, which is the movement of fluid out of the capillaries due to the CHP. We also have osmotic pressure, which is the water moving from an area of higher concentration to a lower concentrated area. Osmosis is the movement of a solvent particle across a semi-permeable membrane from a diluted solution to a concentrated solution. So BCOP is a force that moves water towards the more solid area. It is mainly responsible for maintaining the fluid balance between the blood vessels and the tissues. And so reabsorption will move the fluid into the capillary due to the BCOP. Edema is known to cause swelling by fluid trapped in tissues. There are a couple symptoms known as like difficulty walking, mild pain or sore, stiffness, swelling. You can also probably see weight gain, reduced range of motion, or stretched skin. Some of the causes are if you're in one position for too long, increased CHP, which is heart failure, kidney disease, decreased BCOP, which is liver disease, malnutrition, and kidney disease, and then lymphatic obstruction, which is cancer, infection, or surgery like lymph node removal. So the net filtration occurs since capillary hydrostatic pressure is greater than blood colloidal osmotic pressure, which is BCOP. When the net filtration pressure is positive, fluid moves out. When it's negative, it's reabsorbed. So CHP and IFOP favors infiltration. This means that it pushes fluid out of the capillary into the tissue. And then BCOP and IFHP pulls fluid into the capillary, which favors reabsorption. Lymphatic tissue contains of organs, vessels, tissues that protect from infection and balance fluids. So the lymph is a collection of extra fluid that drains from cells and tissues. It is clear to yellowish fluid derived from interstitial fluid. It contains water, electrolytes, proteins, fats, or white blood cells. It also becomes lymph once it enters the actual lymphatic vessels. So the vessels contain smooth muscle walls and they have one-way valves to help the lymph move, like the veins, and they merge to form into larger trunks. So there are two types of collecting ducts. We have the right lymphatic duct and the thoracic duct in the upper chest, which empties into the subclavian veins. So the right lymphatic duct drains the right arm, the right thoracic, the right head/neck area, and empties into the right vein. The thoracic duct drains the rest of the body, the left side and the entire lower body, and it empties into the left vein. So the organs contain the tonsils, the thymus, the spleen, bone marrow, lymph vessels, and nodes. So the nodes are bean shaped. They're pretty tiny. They are found in clusters. They remove pathogens, cancer cells, and debris, and they filter the lymph, which contain the lymphocytes and the macrophages. The spleen filters the blood. It removes old red blood cells and pathogens. And the thymus is most active in the childhood. So endothelial flaps are the primary valves that permits one-way flow. So they're overlapping endothelial cells that act as one-way valves, and they open when the pressure increases. They also prevent the backflow when it's closed. The terminal lymphatics are vessels where interstitial fluid enters the system to become lymph fluid. So when it comes to recovering fluid, at the arterial end of the capillary bed, hydrostatic pressure is higher than the osmotic pressure since water is being pushed out of the capillary and into the surrounding tissue. As the blood flows towards the venous end of hydrostatic pressure will decrease and the BCOP will remain the same, which will pull the water back into the capillaries. Any fluid that is still remained or isn't reabsorbed by the capillaries, it will drain back into the lymphatic vessels, which will recover the fluid and will return to the bloodstream for circulation. So osmotic pressure will push the water back in, which is the reabsorption. So for the flow of the heart, it flows in one direction. So it starts from the tissues to the capillaries, to the vessels, to the ducts, goes to the veins, and then goes to the heart. So the movement of lymph back to the heart begins when excess interstitial fluid enters the endothelial flaps. So once inside, the fluid is now known as lymph. It flows through the larger vesicles, um, which contain valves that keep it flowing in one direction and try to prevent backflow. Along the way, it will pass through the nodes where the immune cells will remove the debris and pathogens. And then the lymph will enter the lymphatic trunk and will drain into one of the two major ducts that we see. And at this point, the lymph rejoins the bloodstream and into the heart after going into the subclavian vein, which will go back into the heart, which will now complete the cycle of fluid recovery. So some key takeaways would be that bulk flow is the movement driven by pressure gradients or temperature gradients. Filtration will move fluid out of the capillaries and into the tissues due to a higher CHP. Reabsorption will move fluid back into the capillaries due to BCOP. Positive NFP is filtration, and then negative NFP is favored to be reabsorption. An edema is interstitial fluid that is built up, which causes swelling. So the flowway to the heart is interstitial fluid enters the capillaries through the endothelial flaps. They become lymph, which then moves through the vessels with the valves towards the heart. It passes through the lymph nodes for immune filtration, and then it drains into the trunks to the ducts, and then they both will drain into the subclavian veins, which will rejoin the bloodstream. And it's always important to remember that CHP pushes out and BCOP will pull in.